Hello, I'd like to call to order the Wednesday, March 4th, 2026 Citizens Advisory Committee for the Palm Beach Metropolitan Planning Organization. May we please stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everybody. Staff, can we please get a roll call?
At this time, I'm only asking those CAC members attending in person to respond by saying here when I call your name. I want to remind you to unmute your microphones by pushing the button on the base prior to responding. Lily Charlotte Landstrom.
Present.
Aquanette Tyson Thomas is excused. Kate Layden.
Here.
James Garvin.
Here.
Aileen Hernandez. Tay Gaines. Paula Ryan is excused. Jim Knight. Lauren Steve.
Here.
Cheryl Mirante is excused. Vijay Mishra.
Here.
Michael Cuervis. Dana Hurst.
Here.
James Lafferty.
Here.
Greg Fagan. Albert Richwagon. Win Dang.
Here.
Alex Freeman. Thank you, Mr. Chair. We do not have a quorum.
How far removed are we?
We are missing one
That's
member.
fine. Okay. All right. Are there any modifications to the agenda?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, to remove.
Move information items before action items
Yes.
until we receive quorum. All right. Thank you. Are there any changes to the minutes?
Before we do that, we will need a motion, a second to modify the agenda.
Okay.
Second.
Motion by VJ, second by Win. All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
everybody. All right. Now, are there any changes to the minutes from last meeting?
Oh, no, Mr. Chair.
No. Okay. Can I get a motion to adopt the minutes? Moved by Lauren, second by Dana. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Instructions on how to provide public comment are included on this agenda. Staff have received any general comments from the public?
No, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you very much. As a point of privilege, I just want to go ahead and welcome a new member to the Citizens Advisory Committee, Ms. Dana Hertz from City of West Palm Beach. And if Dana, would you care to introduce yourself and tell us a little about why you're here?
Sure. Thank you all for having me. This is something I've really been interested in for the past several years, have expressed interest, and finally I got a call from Commissioner Peduzzi, and I'm very excited to sit on this board and contribute. Thank you.
Are there any other comments from the board? All right, awesome. Thank you. All right, as a reminder, any of action items on the agenda, there are conflict of interest forms available if needed. All right, so we're gonna go on to liaisons report. I invite Matthew Massa, Senior Transportation Planner, to provide an update.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and welcome, Dana, to the board. We're happy to have you, and we look forward to working with you. And to all the members, happy Bicycle Month. So again, Florida Bicycle Month is March, and municipalities are encouraged to celebrate Florida Bicycle Month with proclamations and events. So we encourage everyone to go to palmbeachmpo.org/walk-bike to learn more and get involved. Helmet fitting training. So we would like to all the members to join us for helmet fitting training with Safe Kids Palm Beach County tomorrow, March 5th from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. You can register at palmbeachmpo.org/helmet training. Next week on March 10th, the MPO will be hosting a Florida Bicycle Month bike ride. You can register at palmbeachmpo.org/ride, and we look forward to having you all there. Safe Routes to School workshop. The MPO is hosting a Safe Routes to School workshop on April 3rd from 9:30 a.m. to 12 p.m. More information and registration is available at palmbeachmpo.org/SRTS workshop. Also like to note that Dan Byrne is going to be a part of the SRTS efforts. He's an expert on walk audits, and he will let the committee members know what we're doing for the 5 weeks. and reporting back on best practices on that workshop. So for anyone who knows Dan Burr, he's a really great bike expert, walking bike expert. So, and has done a lot for safe routes to school around the country. So it's great to have him on this effort. Next, we have the Boca Raton Transit Oriented Development TOD Tour. We would like everyone to join us for the TOD Tour on April 22nd from 2 to 3:30 p.m. in Meisner Park. You can register and learn more at palmbeachmpo.org/Boca TOD Tour. Transit Oriented Communities Workshop. We're also having a Transit Oriented Communities Workshop on April 30th from 9:30 a.m. to 12 p.m. You can register and learn more about the MPO's TOC efforts at palmbeachmpo.org/TOC workshop. Autonomous Vehicle Conference. An autonomous vehicle forum will be held May 20th at the Boca Raton Innovation Campus. You can register at autonomousvehicleconference.com. And then also the 2026 FDOT Strategic Highway Safety Plan is ongoing. So FDOT is updating the 2026 Strategic Highway Safety Plan. More information is available at fdot.gov/safety/SHSP/2026 SHSP. There's also the Countywide Transportation Master Plan currently ongoing. To learn more, please go to pbcmoves.com. And of course, to get involved and learn about events upcoming with the MPO, please go to palmbeachmpo.org/participate. And that is all, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Matthew. Any questions from the committee? Yeah, comment, Wynn?
Thank you. So I think if anybody could attend the helmet fitting training, it's actually a very good training. A member from my team attended last year at the TPO in Miami. And because of that, he's certified for helmet fitting. But when you are registered, essentially DOT will give you free helmets so that you can help fit helmets in your community. And so this year, our team will be volunteering our time and effort at the city of Lake Worth Beach Tri-Rail Station to celebrate Florida Bike Month and to receive these helmets and to give it out to anybody who's is in need. So if you can attend the helmet fitting training, I think it's a really good event for any of us to attend.
Thank you, Wynn. Any other comments from the committee?
I think Albert is he's not
Albert,
here,
were you
but
here?
yeah, Albert is not here, but he's also working 2 events in the city of Boca for Florida Bike Month in bike tune-up. He's been volunteering for the past few years, but this year he's doing one at the city of Boca library, and then also at the Tri-Rail station to tune bikes.
Awesome. We appreciate Albert's work in the community. Staff, are there any public comments on these items?
No, Mr. Chair.
I know the workshop for TOCs looks interesting, so thank you. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and skip to information items 3A. Pedestrian, bicycle, and micromobility safety study. I want to invite Brian Ruscher, Nathan George, Principal Multimodal Planner, to present on this item.
Good afternoon, everybody. I promise you I'm not suffering from multiple personality disorder. I am Nathan George, your principal multimodal planner here at the MPO. And Brian is here if you guys have any questions. He'll present your next item. So I'm here today to talk to you about I'm introducing to you the 2026 Pedestrian, Bicyclist, and Micromobility Safety Study. For those of you who may not be familiar, this is a study update. So we have a 2017 study that was conducted under a similar name, but we're expanding slightly to include micromobility. So I'm here today to talk to you about the update process we're going to undertake to have a 2026 study, slightly broader. But first off, we started with a review of the top 10 corridors and intersections where folks who are walking and biking experience the most tragic outcomes in our community. This is where folks get injured or killed on our streets in Palm Beach County. So that's what's documented in the study. You can see a copy of one of the pages from that prior report, and we'll be updating to include more recent data. So I'm going to walk you through that process. Two very important considerations of this study is that it supports the MPO's Vision Zero action plan. So this is the targeted review of bike and ped needs. And then it's also part of our strategic plan to produce this update. So very important and timely. And we wanted to get you an initial update today, and I'll give you a little more info on the overall process. Why are we here to talk about this? Well, safety trends in the ped and bike space continue to be a problem. As you can see on the chart to the right, we continue to see more folks being hit walking or biking in Palm Beach County. So that trend line has continued to go up since the former study was adopted in 2017. Fortunately, we're not seeing a huge uptick in the severe and fatal injuries. The red line on the bottom is staying pretty constant. So if there's one good thing that we can say, it's that we're not seeing that growth in fatal and severe injuries, but it remains a persistent challenge. When folks get hit and they're not inside of a car, they do tend to get injured or killed at a higher rate. And that's something that bears out in our Vision Zero action plan. So we're here to focus on how can we improve safety for those users across the community. So as I mentioned, one of the big changes is that we're incorporating micromobility. So that's your e-bikes, e-scooters, anything that's electrified. Those considerations need to be considered with this update. We see a lot more of those users out on our streets. It's been a continual focus. You can see even at our last board meeting, the news media was here to talk about that topic. What are we going to do about e-bike safety? It's something that's being addressed at the Florida legislature. We may talk about that a little bit more, but it's something that we need to have in mind, and it's going to continue to evolve as considerations as the Florida legislature and communities change laws around where those folks ride, how they ride safely. Similar to the prior study, we'll be taking the data that is more recent and evaluating to identify our new top 10 corridors and intersections. We'll then recommend safety improvements similar to what was done in the 2017 study. And we will produce a document that will be implementation focused, and I'll get a little more into that later in the presentation. Our current status, we started off with a review of the 2017 study. What worked? What were our particular successes? Like the Lake Worth Road example, the photograph that's on the screen. Where are some areas we might be able to make enhancements to what we did? So we reviewed where did we see safety investment in these corridors and intersections that were identified previously. 13 of the 20 locations received some form of safety related improvement, but only 5 of those were directly correlated with the study itself. So that's something I'd like to see much closer to a 1-to-1. If we make a recommendation in this study, we see investment over the next 8 or 9 years. If we're comparing timeframes. So we have done that initial review. We have screened the entire county. So I say here, we currently screened and identified our top 20 corridors and intersections. We're starting with 20 because we recognize that some of the top 10 may fall off. And that's partly because we're reviewing against recently completed projects, currently planned projects. So the projects you'd see in the tip, or a CIP, a capital improvement program at one of the local communities. We may see some overlap there. We want to make sure that the study is not pointing our attention to somewhere that was recently improved and it may not be the best focus. We might need to focus our attention elsewhere. So we're just trying to make sure that we're focusing on 10 locations that we can make pointed recommendations. This is a map that shows the top 20 intersections and corridors that we've identified based on our preliminary analysis. It's not sharing it with you so you can review them all and provide input today. Just want to make sure that everybody knows these are the areas that we're seeing those safety challenges represented geographically. Primarily, the challenges remain in Center County. So we're seeing that, north and south of State Route 80 through the midsection of the county, a little bit down in West Boca, but for the most part, it's mid-county that continues to be a persistent trend from a data-driven perspective. We have screened the entire county, so I can say, where other challenges exist in specific communities, but in terms of the worst, these are the offenders. So if you don't see your community represented here, congratulations. That is great news that your community is not represented, but this is what data is telling us are the areas that we need to focus our specific attention. So the next steps, this is just the introduction, as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation. We will be coming back with, after we finalize the top 10, we'll be assessing safety needs in those corridors at those intersections so we can make targeted recommendations. And then we'll come back to you in May with what are those specific recommendations? What have we found as results of the study? At this point, we're still very much in the middle of things. We've just identified those top 20 areas that we're continuing to screen so we can solidify the top 10. And then we'll be in kind of a pre-documentation phase when we come back in May. We'll have preliminary results. We'll be able to share a presentation similar to what you see today. It's not going to be a finalized product until we get into June. The scope of this project is tied to our fiscal year, so we'll be closing out in June. And then we'll move into implementation. And that's where we'll have the opportunity to say, here are the results of the study. We can consult affected communities, so work one-on-one with staff, community members, to talk with them about the challenges that they are experiencing in those specific areas and what, ground truth, the recommendations that we got from just a data-driven process. We can conduct walk and bike audits so we can get a little bit more into what is the environment telling us out in those areas. We may see planning studies, corridor studies, something that would be more of a planning related effort, or programming of improvements. Sometimes projects come to us as a resurfacing and we can program in safety improvements. So there are a lot of different ways the study can inform the work here at the MPO. Very excited to complete the process, but really exciting to just get the data processed and be able to come back to you in May with those results. And we'll have a much more robust dialogue about specific challenges at that time. So that concludes the presentation. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Nathan. Are there any public comments?
No, Mr. Chair.
Do we have any questions from the committee? Yeah, Jane?
Thank you for the presentation, Nathan. Just a couple of questions, and I didn't really fully introduce myself. So I'm a lifelong West Palm Beach resident, native, and I'm the president of Dreher Park Neighborhood Association. I have been for 10 years. And what I see with respect to e-bikes on a pretty regular basis, they're riding on the trails, they're riding in the sidewalks in the city of West Palm Beach. Is that something that is also being contemplated in the study, the pedestrian bicycle mobility safety study?
Yes, it's a complicated question to answer right now because of proposed legislation. So I would say where we refer to e-micromobility being part of the study, we'll probably frame a lot of that around policy-based recommendations, things that, what can we do to make sure that we're addressing the needs of those users or the challenges that are leading to collisions. There are two tangents, if you will, from that. One is data. Currently, it's very difficult to track where these collisions are occurring because there's not a way to record that in crash reports. That's something there's proposed legislation that would require police departments to track, monitor, and report on micromobility related crashes. That's like a short-term fix that the legislature has proposed. So that will give us a lot more data, which is helpful. There's also a legislative change right now that would require anybody on these bikes or scooters to slow to 10 miles an hour within 100 feet of overtaking a pedestrian in a shared environment. So, if they're on a shared use path or a trail, they need to slow before they pass somebody. That's intended to reduce the conflict and the potential for heads and bikes to collide with each other. Both of those issues are current pending legislation, so they would not take effect until mid-year or potentially later, or they could be changed as we go through the legislative process. So hopefully I've answered your question, but there's a lot that is still unknown just from a legislative perspective.
Sure. Thank you.
Lily? Oh, VJ, okay. I didn't see who was up first. Good. Yeah, VJ.
So after we.
BJ, please make sure you're using your microphone. Thank you.
So after we collect this data, what happens with that? Like, you have the presentation, and does it goes into any future planning of projects or anything else? Like, what happens with this data?
Yeah, for right now, so what we'll have at the end of this process is we will have 10 discrete intersections and corridors that will be documented in the study with specific recommendations. So it might be something like, at this intersection, we don't have some signal equipment, countdown heads, push buttons, something like that. And so our recommendations are, fix that problem. We'll have those kinds of recommendations that are documented in the study report. And then MPO we'll have the ability to share that with our local partners. So the like local public works, FDOT, traffic department, if if it's a county road, for example, share it with county traffic. So those recommendations can be specifically considered for future safety projects, any other kind of interventions. Some things can be very easily done. FDOT has a process they call push button, where they go out and perform maintenance repairs that are a lighter touch. But the Lake Worth Road example is one where you might see, a project that takes several years to go through planning to implementation. So it's kind of anywhere in between. That's the intent of this document, is to inform all of those conversations. And it's a resource for staff here to both provide assistance and to reference it as we go through those through the tip process. Like when we come to you with the tip, where can we apply funds that will improve safety in that regard?
So the results of 2017 study, do you have a track of like, okay, we had 10 identified, these were taken care of, like you said, Lake Worth Road is one of them. Do we have like other 9? What happened with the other 9?
Yes, yeah, we have a complete matrix right now that I can't share because it's still preliminary. But basically, we asked our consultant to review each of the corridors and assess what work was completed, what's upcoming, like what is programmed in the tip. So they've conducted that assessment, and that's where we got 13 of those locations had some form of improvements. Some of the improvements that were not specifically called for, that's where I say we could maybe broaden our approach this time, so we make sure that we capture those sorts of wins as takeaways from this study. But then there were 5 locations that had specific improvements related to the study. Some of them were like fixing push buttons, the Lake Worth Road example, putting in separated bike lanes or widening a shared use path. And then my goal with that, with including that in our scope and in this study, is just to make sure we document, what did we learn from the past study that we can repeat? What maybe did we learn from the past study that we can pivot a little bit and better leverage this as a tool moving forward? So I think we can, take those lessons learned and apply them as we document the final study.
That's great. Thank you for one last follow-up. So I did not see a lot of these projects in the Western counties. It's a good news as far as I'm concerned, but you guys have looked the whole county and said, okay, Western counties, based on what information you have, don't have that much of issues. That's why we focus on Eastern part of the county.
Right now, it's purely a data-driven process. So it would be, we don't see the intensity of crashes occurring in those locations. Like Western County, the only location that really jumped out at us was Southern Boulevard, a section of that's a little bit, it's somewhere in the Wellington, Royal Palm Beach area that did trigger. It had a number of crashes that rose to that level of interest, if you will, to be in the top 20. I think it was not top 10, it was top 20. But yeah, it's a good thing if you're not on the list. It is based on the total number of crashes that result in a fatal or severe. So, hopefully as we leverage tools like this, we can also start looking at where do we see a lot of crashes that maybe don't result in those severe outcomes. That may be an indicator of additional locations we need to look at. That'll be a separate effort, something that probably falls under our Vision Zero efforts with our high injury network.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Lily.
I just had a quick question. It's top 20 and then you're going down to top 10. So
Correct.
I saw some in Boynton that were top 20, but they might not make it to the top 10. Are those intersections still going to be looked at, or is that just not a part of the scope?
Yeah, so the goal of the top 10 is just to limit the amount of review that we're asking of our consultant team. This is a consultant-driven work product. So it's really, we narrow it down so they can provide targeted recommendations at the 10 worst locations. And these, I will say, are not necessarily the worst locations, because we have areas that data says they're bad, but we've also had projects or we have upcoming projects. So we don't want to direct their attention if they can't provide a recommendation, because it would potentially conflict with or just repeat what's already been programmed. So yeah, there may be locations that are 14, 15, 16, and they don't make the final list. That doesn't mean they're not important or still critical to have interventions at. It just means they won't be a focus of the study. And as I said, we did screen the entire county, so we can look a little bit lower than the top 10, just at a staff level from a planning perspective to say, where do we see some challenges? We have that as a screening tool if we're just having discussions with our communities about where might we need to perform similar interventions that aren't documented in the report. We can apply those more systematically as recommendations. Yeah. Hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you.
Seeing no other questions. Thank you, Nathan.
Thank you all.
All right, now it's Brian's turn. So I want information on 3B, a transit-oriented communities framework study. I want to invite Brian Reisher, Deputy Director of Multimodal, to present on this item.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Welcome. All right, so I apologize to the chair. You might see some of these slides because we presented similar information at our transit-oriented communities workshop that we hosted with Palm Beach Gardens back in, I want to say October. So he might see some of this repeat information, but there are new things for him to take in and digest, as well as new things potentially for this committee as well. So we're going to get very jargony today, and I apologize for that. When I say transit oriented, I just mean like there's generally this framework that we professionals try to look at when we say a community, a corridor, a place can help support a shift in transportation modes. So we're going to talk about corridors, meaning roadways. We're going to talk about communities, which is a little bit more broad. It could be like a whole city. It could be like a downtown area, for example. And we're going to talk in specifics about the work that we've been getting through and that we're working on right now. So to start us off, last fiscal year, the governing board had us at the MPO create a transit-oriented communities study framework. Now, what this means is we looked at the kind of best practices around the country. We tried to better understand what we need to do to get to transit-oriented communities in Palm Beach County. We have a few communities that are trying really hard. When you think about transit-oriented in this area, in this context, West Palm Beach in the downtown probably is the best case in terms of the service that's provided with transit and the development that's coming around the intermodal center. So we have Palm Tran running 17 routes, Greyhound, Amtrak, Bright Bike, the city's trolley service, and Tri-Rail, all at the intermodal center. Immediately around the intermodal center is going to be a new Cleveland Clinic, Transit Village, Vanderbilt University. So you have a bunch of jobs, potentially residences, and you have transit service around it. What better way to think about how those people can move around Palm Beach County than having all of those people get access to transit? So when we say transit-oriented communities, that's the kind of thing that we mean. We have lots of transit-oriented development that's happening in the downtown West Palm area. I mean, if you look at what happened with the Brightline station, with the Parkline development, and Langione, the property across the street, I forget, the Sterling organization, the retirement community that's just across the street, all of that is considered transit-oriented development. So as we think about corridors, Okeechobee Boulevard, Lakewood Road, Congress, Military, along those corridors, what we want to do is establish policies and procedures that help support more people getting on board transit. So that's what that study framework looks at. I'm going to talk a little bit about the differences and the similarities. So I already mentioned there's like transit-oriented sites, transit-oriented districts, corridors, cities. Generally speaking, we talk about system nodes and station connections. So a node could be a station itself, like the Tri-Rail station, whereas, excuse me, station connections really talks more to the infrastructure that supports it. But when you hear transit-oriented, the similarities that should come to mind are that there is a mix of uses, meaning that there is jobs, there's residences, there's services, there is recreational infrastructure, all located around that site or that corridor or that city. There is options to get around that are not just an automobile. So perfect example of that, going back to the West Palm Beach example, I would argue Boca Raton has a developing TOD as well with the Meisner area, with Tri-Rail getting a new facility that they just broke ground on at the Tri-Rail station, in addition being located near the Innovation Campus as well. So there's things that are similar, whether you're talking about corridors, communities, or just one transit-oriented development. So as I mentioned before, there are certain things that you need to think about and that should be provided along either a corridor or a community. We really talk a lot about access, which gets to the graphic on the left. We want to be able to walk, take trolley, transit, bike, get to housing, be able to play in the area. And we also want everyday access. So we also look at it from the perspective of maybe it's a 15-minute walk to this site to get access to the transit, or a 15-minute e-bicycle or a 15-minute bicycle ride. It gets you about 3 miles. So that's the kind of thing that we're talking about when we say sites and corridors. Now, we did a very technical exercise where we took what the state of Florida had put out as their context classification manual. And what that does that looks at the natural areas being one transect is what they call it, all the way to the urban core. It is the perfect example of Palm Beach County when you think about it in terms of how we have developed. We have the Everglades and Lake Okeechobee and natural areas to our west. On the eastern side, we have our urban core. It is probably one of the best examples of context classification, I would say, in the state, although there are lots of coastal communities that want to lay claim. I will say Palm Beach County gets to take the throne. Belglade is a really good example of a natural area or a rural zone. There's obviously like a town characteristic in that area, but as you exit the core of Belglade, you quickly get into more of a rural or a natural feeling as you drive through the central part of the state. In the suburban context, we have places like the village of Wellington, Royal Palm Beach, other areas which are more of a transitional area between natural areas and the urban core. And then of course we have places like downtown West Palm Beach, which really are an urban core, more dense type location. So we looked at this and we tried to come up with what characteristics are necessary to support transit, because we know our roadways are built out. We'll get to that in a bit. We know we're going to continue growing because we're such a popular area. So what's going to make transit-oriented communities successful? First category, urban form. You know it when you've seen it. So how many of you went to college and thought it was the most walkable experience that you've ever had? That's because the urban form of colleges generally, and as they've been developed, supports walking. So the form of the environment that you're in matters. The complete street component of it matters as well. And then lastly, the mobility hubs. So I'm going to flip quickly through each of those characteristics from the colors on the left and show you some of the influencing factors. There's a lot of overlap, obviously. So zoning and density contributes a lot to whether or not we think that people will generally get on board, so to speak, the bus. If there's high concentrations of people living in an area and everybody's driving, guess what? You will have a congested corridor. But if you offer more efficient forms of transit, higher capacity, more frequent buses, trains, etc., you're going to get more ridership. Land use diversity matters. I talked about jobs, residence housing, all that stuff. Urban street design, making sure that we have complete streets, and then the distance and the quality of transit. So on the urban form side, I mentioned before, you need to ensure that your urban environments, and some examples here, Northwood, downtown West Palm Beach, Delray Beach, Boca Raton, all have really good urban form because they're laid out in the downtown areas at least, and the classical urbanism style where the buildings are built right up to the street or at the sidewalk. And they're able to accommodate things like street trees, on-street parking, just generally good urban planning. That also has to do with densities and intensities. Not everyone is going to take the bus, but if you have a good number of people in a building that have access to that bus and that platform, you might see a greater chance of them riding, especially if that is connecting urban area to urban area. There's development constraints. So these are all the things that we're thinking about in terms of urban form and criteria. Of course, we talk a lot about complete streets and some of the design design elements that we would hope to see, the destination accessibility that we would hope to see, and of course, the development constraints that might come along with complete streets, such as completing the first mile, the last mile, and so on and so forth. So last one is just mobility hubs. I mentioned the intermodal center. The principle that I want you all to walk away from and understand about mobility hubs is we want people to have access to more than one form of transportation once they land at a place. So if you can drive somewhere, park and then walk, that's great, but I wouldn't consider it a mobility hub. Now, if you can walk or take a mobility on demand shuttle, or you can take a shared bicycle, that's starting to reach that level of getting to being a mobility hub. But you also should be able to take longer distance trips. So if you're walking a quarter of a mile, it's probably okay. But if you have to travel a mile, let's say from the intermodal center to this office, it's going to be a bit of a trek every day, and you're not going to feel comfortable. And for that, you would also want to have on-demand shuttle or a bike share fleet or something to help close that distance. And of course, you want it to be quality. You don't want to get onto a bus and it not be air conditioned, or it to be packed to the brim, or to get to the bike share fleet station and all the bikes are broken. So the quality also matters at a mobility hub as well. So let's talk a little bit about our corridors and our communities. I already mentioned this, so I gave you a little bit too much of a sneak preview, but and you've seen this slide before, I'm sure. We are going to grow from 1.5 to 1.8 million. I think I have an open wager with Andrew on one of the public betting platforms of if we're actually going to get 2 million by 2050, but we'll see. And in South Florida, we're going to grow by 1 million people across the tri-counties. So we know we're going to grow. It's just a matter of life, even with the people, leaving the state for high taxes or whatever reason. We're still going to have a good in-migration compared to the out-migration going into the future. We're also going to grow in the most dense areas of the county, as well as our suburban areas. So I mentioned before that transect between Palm Beach County. And what you see on the screen is the absolute change in density. So that means the darker blue means it's going to get even more dense than it already is. So if you look at the urban redevelopment area, that's kind of Green Acres, Palm Springs, Lake Worth corridor, and the central part of the county, as well as West Palm Beach, all the way down to Boca Raton and all the way up to Jupiter. That's where we're going to get the most change in density through the 2050 timeframe. Our housing costs have come down a little bit, but when you combine housing and transportation, we're at 55%. When only 45% is considered affordable. I don't imagine that this is going to go down into the future. The cost of vehicles continue to rise. The median cost for a new vehicle just surpassed $50,000 for a new purchase. So that is one consideration. But in addition to that, our building permits generally haven't kept pace with the population growth as well. So that's something that we're thinking about and looking at all the time. I don't think the housing crisis has quite yet been solved in Florida, but it's something to continue to track and monitor. So we know we're going to grow. We know housing and transportation costs are continuing to rise, or that they have at least surpassed and not gotten anywhere near the affordability threshold that we strive for. And as a reminder, we do have a plan for how to address our key corridors. So we have envisioned this in the last long-range transportation plan for 2045. We've carried it forward in 2050, what's called our 561 network. This is our premium transit network that looks at light rail transit, bus rapid transit, and bus rapid transit light along our major corridors, where we're going to have over 70% of the people living and 82% of all the non-farm jobs within 2 miles of these blue corridors on the screen. And of course, we have Tri-Rail also running as a consideration within these corridors as well, but they're kind of overlapping with other corridors. So realistically, what we envision as the need to move into the future is to get our corridors with better transit services. The best example of this is probably our US 1 corridor study that we completed in 2018. Think about how that corridor, has 50,000, roughly 60,000 people every day. The ongoing countywide transit number that people have in their mind is only 1% of people take transit to work, but there's 5,000 people that are using transit on US 1 every day. It's approaching 6,000. So if we're carrying 10% of the trips on US 1 being transit riders, that's pretty substantial. And that's why these corridors, we need to continue to look at them and reinvest in them and try to make the transit experience as good as we can, so that these transit-oriented corridors can develop and that they can support future populations that are going to be using the roads as well. We also envision in the 2050 plan new express bus services. So if you aren't aware, the Interstate 95 Express program that runs between downtown Palm Beach County and Port St. Lucie carries 60 people a day. Between 4 trips total, so about 15 passengers per bus are going on Interstate 95. We've also envisioned 11 different mobility on demand zones across the county. The newest one that is up and coming is in the acreage. We're seeking funding to see if we can get a mobility on demand service in the midwestern part of the county to support areas like Black Statue Groves, Acreage, Westlake, and others that will feed into either the premium transit network or just take people where they need to go. Those areas are generally not dense enough to run a regular bus service, and it would probably not generate the ridership. But mobility on demand has been proven time and again. I think the best example of this is Go Glades, which has, I believe, over 100 riders per day using the system, and it's lower cost than running a typical Palm Tran Express bus or a Palm Tran bus, excuse me. So I would encourage you to all stay engaged. We do have 3 corridors that we're looking at for densities and intensities to see what level of transit service we actually can truly reach for, with example, Military Trail, Lake Worth Road, and Boynton Beach Boulevard. So we kind of took the one north-south corridor, that's kind of our key mover that kind of sits nestled between 95 and the Turnpike. And then we took 2 east-west corridors in addition to that, because east-west seems to be a significant problem child for us here in Palm Beach County. One is more urban with Lake Worth Road. One is more suburban with Boynton Beach Boulevard. So we're looking at all of these against those influencing factors that we talked about before to see what we need to do on a policy level to change for the future. So we'll come up with standardized influencing factors. And if you really want to dive deep and get nerdy with me, then come to our workshop on April 30th. We're going to be here in person or online. If you really want the best experience, though, I again encourage you to be in person. And of course, you can learn more about these efforts and read the documentation that I talked about before at palmbeachmpo.org/mobility. So happy to take any questions. I'm sure that's a lot. Tried to walk through it as best I can in a non-technical way, but very happy to get any feedback that you have for this moment.
Thank you, Brian. Do we have any comments from the public?
No, Mr. Chair.
All right, I saw VJ up. VJ. Yep.
So since you brought that up, where is our LRT plan? I know it was with FDOT for quite
Still
some
with
time.
FDOT, they're doing the modeling run right now. So yeah, so we're probably 2 or 3 months away from finishing up phase 1, which is the transit analysis. And then phase 2 will be determined on the outcome of the phase 1. So this year we should have a pretty good update from the FDOT on that. And then next year will be like kind of the next step implementation phase to analyze that. So,
And the 3 corridors you just showed, those are our focus for future. That's where we want to look at more.
those are
POCs.
those are ones that we're using to test the kind of standardized influencing factors that we want to see. So for example, if we have a downtown central business district, we want to ensure that there's a certain number of units that are going to be located within that station proximity. And if there's a suburban commuter type station, it's going to be substantially different. So what we're doing is we're looking at all the potential key station areas along Military Trail, just for, again, for example, to see what the policies around that area say, and if they line up with what we would expect for TOD to be. And from that, what we can do is we can say, well, the corridor will be deficient ridership in the future. So we need to either change policy or adjust what we expect from our future transit service to service the people who are using this road. So this analysis is a little bit of a testing and verification exercise, and a little bit of a land development recommendation exercise where we can look at, for example, Green Acres mentioned that they have regional activity centers where they've already programmed in higher densities and intensities that could be used to develop station areas. So the way we look at that is, well, that's great. Lake Worth hasn't done it yet. So they're going to put in 60 units an acre in Green Acres. Well, Lake Worth, you could go down to 20. We're going to try to make sure that it lines up with our expectations to get to a bus rapid transit or another 15-minute peak hour transit service only, connecting these station areas. Because if you go from North County to South County on Route 3, you'll see 6,000 people and it's going to take you 2 hours to get across the county. So we're trying to figure out how we can expedite that transit service and see if the land development policies around it support what we're going for.
Just a follow-up session. I don't know if it's relevant to you, so, but like, I would think that Okeechobee Military Trail intersection should be one of the key areas where you want to look for that, because
Yeah.
that's,
So we've done this exercise basically as part of like the Okeechobee study.
uh-huh,
We have really good recommendations for land use already.
okay.
We're actually working with Westgate CRA right now on, I believe it's the Cross County Mall. It's the intersection of Okeechobee and Military. They recently passed a huge density incentive program where they could go 4,000 units above what they would normally do in the Westgate CRA, which is roughly Florida Mango, Military, Okeechobee, and Belvedere. So
That has been one of the best thing they have done. I've seen some projects proposal in that one. They have these micro apartments and all those things coming in that CRA. Really interesting work they're
Right.
doing over there. But so if you have done it, that's great.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
So the next phase of this would be working directly with those communities to try to find best test cases to see where this would truly work and what policies need to go into place, because the county can be like a monster in thinking about all the different rules and regulations. So helping a few test subjects through that process is really the next best step for us to take after this study.
All right, we'll go with Lily.
I was wondering if there were any, looking at the typologies, if there was any interest in tailoring these kind of idea of like, I think you called them transit hubs or like mobility hubs, like being able to differentiate between a suburban area's public transit accessibility versus a more urban area.
Yes, we do that. So in the study framework, which is at mpo.org/mobility, we have, I think, 6 different station area types, and they kind of line up with the transect of like that, what FDOT says about complete streets. So we have everything from like a rural one, which doesn't lean hard into development. It leans more into park and ride, making sure that the station is accessible and people who are going to do like kiss and ride type service. And then you have like the downtown urban, which basically says, if you don't already have active parking management, like, the overhead green, red lights, charging for parking, things that are going to get people out of their cars, or to, encourage them to take transit, that's not going to be a very effective central business district station area. So we do differentiate that in the study framework, which is available at the website.
Well, I will look at that.
Yeah.
And then also, I just noticed on the map that Boynton Beach's transit on demand service
Mhm.
isn't on there.
We can get that added. It might have been after the LRTP.
Okay,
So we'll make sure that we add that one in.
perfect. Thank you.
All right, Dana.
Thank you. So Brian, you were talking more big picture, the entire county. And there's one thing that West Palm residents have been interested in growing and changing, and that is actually the lack of connectivity from the south end of West Palm
Mhm.
to both downtown and the north end. I know that we do have Circuit. It does not come to the south end. It has very defined boundaries, as you know. We also do not have a trolley that comes down to the south end. And I'm wondering, we also don't have bright bikes, and you brought up all
Right.
of those. So is any of this being factored in, or can you shed some light on West Palm specifically? Thank you.
Yes, so I know there is an active procurement cycle for West Palm Beach that is looking at changing the circuit system to be, 1, mobility on demand, but then 2, provide fixed route transit service north-south. And I'm not sure what the boundaries are of that specifically. I don't think that they have yet been defined, but I know that that should be coming. With respect to US 1, we actually have had a lot of recommendations for how to improve transit service. We looked at, Route 1 runs from, the Gardens Mall all the way down to Boca Raton. And, 70% of the people are using that as a direct trip, meaning they're not transferring at any point. So breaking up the service into the north, central, and south sections would help tweak the dials for that route and make it so that, for example, some of the more congested areas, I'd argue central Palm Beach County, with including West Palm in that, would benefit substantially from having a different route layout and characteristic. So, I mean, if we did that, we could easily say, well, North County doesn't need as much transit service. I mean, you'd have to do all types of analysis that would actually prove that out in terms of operations. There's Title VI discrimination things that come into play. But, you know, we've looked at this a number of times and already made those recommendations to Palm Trend. We'll continue to champion them. But it's hard to do big shifts, and Route 1 has in existence since, I want to say, for the 50 years that Palm Trend has been riding, and including time before it was Palm Trend. So
I'm also thinking in terms of tourists.
Right.
So you have, obviously, downtown West Palm Beach is a hub, and there's a way for them to get to Nora. There's a way for them to get to Curry, but we have the Park West Palm, we have CAC Science Center, we have the zoo, we have all these great things. And I'm hoping that that can actually be considered. I don't think those people are going to hop on a Palm Trend. I just don't. So I think that if we were able to expand circuit or have a trolley or even bright bikes that they can just hop on and take, you know, down to the south end, or have little hubs in the south end where people can go downtown or north. Just a suggestion.
yeah,
Thank
I
you.
agreed. And we'll work with Palm Trend and see what the city's plans are and see if we can get an update from them on that.
Lauren?
Thanks. For the studies taking place on Lake Worth Road and Boynton Beach Road, how far west are you going in your review?
We're taking it to military on Boynton Beach. Lake Worth Road, we've asked the study team they won't go all the way to State Road 7 and up to Wellington, but ultimately the transit connection that we envision into the future would be almost like a loop between West Palm Beach over to Okeechobee, over Okeechobee, down on State Road 7 to the mall at Wellington, and have a split route where you could also do the same service down State Road 7 to Lake Worth Road and then east. So we're trying to incorporate both of those. Well, I should say the Lake Worth concept at least as part of this. Formally, they're only looking over to Military Trail because, again, that's like most dense. I'll do a double check and see if we have the land use, because it does get less dense as you go further west and west, and so that you lose some of that effectiveness if you're trying to do like high capacity, high efficiency transit, as you start losing your potential rider base from population or jobs. So
Is there any universe where you envision a transit oriented development concept surrounding the Wellington Mall, or is the density just not?
Absolutely.
Okay.
yeah, no, the mall at Wellington Green, the biggest challenge that they have there is the different site owners. So the biggest challenge to doing transit oriented development in places like Palm Beach County, where there's a lot of development, really big shopping centers, some of which maybe have developed over time, is that properties don't always have the same owner right next to each other. I think the mall at Wellington was either 5 or 3 property owners that hold different parts of the puzzle that make up the mall itself.
That's weird.
Very. So that's one challenge. Getting them all to agree, hey, we want a train to pull off of State Road 7 and into the mall, or it could dead end, is a very interesting concept. But we actually have had numerous presentations to the village council at Wellington to talk to them about it. This was all kind of when the mall kind of lost a lot of property value, and it really helped to spur the conversation about what could change there. And they've been very supportive of it. So it is going to be probably the westernmost prominent TOD in the county, because I can't see anything happening out that would be at the same level in the magnitude in the western areas like Belgrade or otherwise. So
Have you guys communicated at all? I think, and the other gentleman from Wellington may be more proficient in this than me. The parcel just south of the mall that is like proposed for development, have there been any conversations with them about how to make that, their plans for that more transit friendly, or is it too soon to?
we generally don't get into the weeds too closely with specific developments. We generally let Palm Tran lead the commentary around those transit specific sites, because what's going to happen if what we do is really more transformational, it's going to require substantial capital investment. And we don't want them to put in something that we then go in and tear out 10 years later. So we try to let it just kind of sit within the existing system unless there's a really good plan in place. Okeechobee Boulevard is probably the best example of this, where we have the shelters that we know which are going to be kind of like super stops. There's a few shelter pads lengthwise that we can fit really good shelters with on-time displays that say when the next bus is coming. There's advertising space, so it can serve as a revenue generator. We don't have that for State Road 7 yet, just because it's not the highest density ridership yet. But Okeechobee Boulevard, we're getting there. It's just, it'll take time for that corridor.
Any other questions? Thank you, Brian. Appreciate it, sir.
No problem. Thank you. I appreciate all of you, and come grab me afterwards if you want to chat more.
All right, so we're going to go back in the agenda to what we moved later. Action items, which is motion to recommend adoption of fiscal year 27-28 Unified Planning Work Program. We have yet to receive quorum, so we will just present on this item and discuss,
Yeah.
but take no action.
Yes, per our operating procedures, if a quorum cannot be established, action item on the agenda will receive a consensus. So
All right, thank you very much, Ruth. Andrew, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, or good afternoon, CSE members. So this is our second reading of the Unified Planning Work Program. And so if you were here last month, it is a very similar presentation, just a few updates more to the visuals than anything. And there's no major change to any of the funding or the tasks from our last reading. So this is a second reading today, and then this will be adopted by our governing board this month. And so with our Unified Planning Work Program, as a metropolitan plan organization, all of those throughout the country, there's 455 of us. We're all required to have these 4 documents. It is the Unified Planning Work Program, which we're talking about today. It's our public participation plan, which guides how we participate with the public in our review periods. And then there's the long range transportation plan, which is our 25-year horizon outlook on where we're headed for Palm Beach County. And then we have the transportation improvement program, which is our 5-year funding, federal and state funds towards projects for the next 5 years. And so today we're talking about the Unified Planning Work Program, and that's our 2-year operational plan and budget. And it's going to cover the state fiscal year. So it starts July of this year, July 1st, 2026, which is fiscal year 2027. It's going to go all the way through fiscal year 28, which ends June 30th of 2028. And in it is really, when I say the operational plan and budget, it's all the activities that we do as an agency and what those tasks are, and then who are going to do those tasks and how they're funded. So it's really the what, who, when, and how much for each task and planning activity within the Unified Planning Work Program. And why this is important is really, this is our guiding document that is then reviewed and approved by FDOT and FHWA, so the Federal Highway Administration and the Federal Transit Administration. And so they give us approval that says, yes, these are activities that are in line with the federal funds that we're providing you, and they meet all the federal guidelines and all the state guidelines. And so once they approve that, we can start operating under that new work program. And then we work on a reimbursement basis. So most of the funds of the MPO are federal funds. And so monthly we reimburse towards this grant. So basically we accomplish the activities that are outlined in the Unified Planning Work Program. And then we seek reimbursement monthly for those activities. There are 6 core tasks outlined in the Unified Planning Work Program. The first one is engage and collaborate. So that's all of our outward engagement with the public, and then also to different stakeholder groups and organizations. It's the presentations we do, the tabling, our social media. And then also in there is the collaboration, which is, for example, the activities we do in this room for committees and the governing board and the administrative staff that goes towards that. Second is the short range planning. So that's our some of the stuff that Brian just presented on and Nathan presented on, those corridor studies, those safety plans, some of the work we do with some of the other municipalities throughout the county, that's all under short range planning. And then the products that come out of that are prioritized and put into our transportation improvement program, those are all under the short range planning. Next is long range planning. And so this is that 25-year horizon where we're looking further into the future. Also incorporated under the long range planning is sort of the projections and our travel demand modeling goes under there. Something new this time around that wasn't in prior unified planning work programs is looking and exploring a little bit more when it comes to digital twins and sort of AI technology as we do scenario planning. And so really what that is trying to just come together with our partners and figure out ways to have faster processing of some of our scenario plannings that we do in long range planning. Next is the administrative agency task. And so that's all the sort of facilities that you see here, a lot of the financial and administrative tasks that we're required to do as agency. So ensuring that we're following federal and state practices and that we're a certified agency. So that all is under task 4. Then we have regional coordination, and that's really with our partners to the south mostly. That is Broward MPO and then the Miami-Dade TPO, so 2 other MPOs in our region. And together we make up the Southeast Florida Transportation Council, CEFTEC. And put in this regional coordination is actually the administration of CEFTEC, which is a collaborative body between the 3 of us. We're actually going to be the ones who administer CEFTEC in this next cycle. So that means that in the latter half of this UPW piece, or more into fiscal year 2028, we'll be coordinating those efforts. And we'll also be the ones who coordinate the regional transportation plan, which is a joint planning effort together for a 25-year planning horizon that incorporates all of those long-range plans from the 3 MPOs. And then lastly, task 6 is agency expenditures with local funds. There are a few items that aren't federally reimbursable. This comes from a 10 cents per capita for our member agencies of the MPO. And that goes towards more outreach and marketing that may not be reimbursable. And then it also goes towards enhancements to the agency. It can go towards travel for board members when it comes to some collaborative efforts we do throughout the region of the United States. So these graphs on the screen, it's 2 bar graphs, make up sort of the revenue sources for us for fiscal year 27-28. It's about $4.5 million per year. And the overwhelming majority are federal funds that we receive based on our population. And so our population within the urban areas is based off these funds. And so we get federal highway and federal transit funds, which makes up the majority of them, which is $2.5 million. We then use another pot of federal surface transportation funds, which are also formula funds, which makes up the other part of that, which is $1.75 million per year. So that's the majority of our funding source. Then there's 2 additional funding sources. The first being a state funding source, small pot of funds, but important to mention, around $60,000 a year are from the Commission for Transportation Disadvantaged. And so you all are familiar with our major committees, our advisory committees, which are the Technical Advisory Committee, the CAC, and then our Vision Zero Advisory Committee. There's a 4th one, which is our local coordinating board. And so that meets 4 times a year, and they evaluate the transportation disadvantage, so those paratransit activities that Palm Tran oversees. And so we have a little bit of money to administer that. It's $60,000. And then next is the 10 cents per capita, so per person, that goes towards non-federal reimbursements. That makes up around $160,000 a year. And then important to mention, but not listed here as like a concrete source, but typically federal funds require a match, and we soft match that at the state level. So there's no local contributions that are required for our federal funds. So when a lot of times you'll see like an 80-20 split, right? So the feds give you 80% on the dollar, and you're required to match 20%. We still do that, but it's done at the statewide level. So that's not coming out of local jurisdictions funds. Here is the 2-year total based on a pie chart of those same tasks. So some of our major sort of spread of where that is occurring is engage and collaborate. short-range planning, and then administer the agency. And this is a more detailed bar graph, but it's the same activities for the 2 years, but it's breaking it down more by who is accomplishing those tasks, whether it's personnel, so our staff, whether it's our consultants. And then there's 4 other categories: travel, direct expenses, which is more like facilities and our day-to-day items for those, and then supplies and equipment. And those are under the administer the agency. So those are the only ones that have those 4 additional categories. Okay. Our timeline to adoption, this is the second reading. It's going to go to the governing board this month. Again, once it's adopted by the governing board, it's submitted to AFDOT and the Federal Highway Administration and Federal Transit Administration. Once they approve that, they then authorize those funds for the new year. And then we're utilizing those funds come July 1st. And again, it's really, we accomplish activities within the Unified Planning Work Program. We then seek reimbursement from the federal government, and then they reimburse us monthly. Public review is from January, late January, and goes all the way to the governing board meeting. So comments can be received until then. And then that's all I have. Obviously today we're not motioning recommend adoption, but we can discuss.
Yep. Thank you, Andrew. Appreciate that. Any discussions, questions from the committee? All right.
Lots
So-
to take in.
So nobody has really any issues with any of what's been presented today? No. All right.
And I'll just say, it's obviously a lot of information. If none of it really makes sense, and there's always ways that we want to make it more palatable or easy to understand, just let us know. Sometimes I'm presenting complicated things, so we'd love to hear feedback whenever.
All right.
That's okay. No feedback's fine too.
I have one.
VJ, go for it.
On one of the slides, where you have the bar graph.
Yep.
Just change the colors. It's very
Sure.
hard. to
I
see.
used all the, I used all blues, I think.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It was hard to see.
Oh, I
which
can't
one
go
is
back,
what.
sorry. Oh, there we go.
Yeah, the other one. It's very hard to say which one is what.
Yes, yes. So starting left to right, darker, I guess blue. Yeah, they're all the same shade.
They're all consultants. I only see consultants.
That's why it's very hard to say.
That's a good point. I'll change that for the governing board and for tomorrow's meeting.
All right. Thank you, VJ. Thank you, Andrew. I appreciate that, sir.
Appreciate the feedback. Thank you.
All right. All right. So we have some administrative items, 4A through 4D are informational only. There'll be no presentation unless requested by a committee member. Any requested? Seeing none. Are there any public comments on any of these items?
No, Mr. Chair.
All right, so we're going to take a little bit of a hiatus, and the next CAC meeting is scheduled for May 6th, 2026. At this time, our committee meeting is adjourned.